So it is now recording. Yep. Algebra 2, Part 1, review. Day 1.
Take one.
Take 1. Actually, this is take 2. We tried it last hour too, but so. All right, so here we go. So we're just going to go over the first page, the linear review portion that you guys have already completed, and then we'll try to get through as much as the quadratic as we can before you guys leave today. All right. So I'm just going to go through and put down the problems that you guys have, right? What you need in order to solve them. So this is the first one. It just asks you to find the slope. So remember, the slope is the change in the y value. So y2 minus y1 over x of 2 minus x of 1. So since they gave you 2 points, you could just label them. One of them is your first point, right? And one of them is your second point. And then just do direct substitution into the equation. As I looked around, most people had this done just fine. So negative 1 minus 3 over 3 minus 2, which gives you negative 4 over 1. So then the slope is 4. Negative 4, right? All right, so let's look at the next one. So the next one, they gave you information you have to find the equation of the line by using the information that they gave you.
Is it supposed to be 3 equations? Like one?
There's one equation for each one of these. So there's three different equations. Okay. So for A, so I'm gonna do the work down here. So for A, they gave me 2 points. So we know that the equation of the line is y equals mx plus b, where b is my y-intercept and m is my slope, right? And x and y are just points, right? So they gave me 2 coordinate points. I can use those 2 coordinate points to find the slope, right? So that's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to find the slope. So we say the slope, so change in y over change in x. So 9 minus a negative 4 would be 9 plus 4, right? And 8 minus a negative 4 would be 8 plus 4. So that gives you 13 over 12, right? Change in y over change in x. So
That's
same as we just did on the last one. So this one's A. Yep. This is the first part of A. So once you have the slope, then there are 2 ways that we can go about solving it. We either can do direct substitution and substitute in the slope and for your m, and then pick one of these 2 points to plug in for your b, or you can put it into point slope. So I'll write the equation for point slope. So the equation for point slope is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x of 1. Now I'm going to go through and do, since we have multiple equations, I'm going to show you both methods to solve for the equation, right? So we'll start with just substituting in. We'll start with this one. We'll use this method first. So I'm just going to plug in 13 halves for my slope, for the m, and then I'm going to pick one of these 2 points that they gave me. So do you guys want to use negative 4, or 8, 9? 8 and 9. Okay, so this is going to be an x, and this is going to be my y. So I'm going to plug the x and y into this x and y for this equation and plug in the m for my slope. So we say 9 equals the slope, which we said was 13 twelfths, then times my x, which the x in this case is 8, right? And then that's going to be plus b. So now we just find our b value. So how do we find our b value? Well, we have this 8. Oops, that doesn't move up. So we can make 8 a fraction, and we can go 13 times 8 and then divided by 12, right? We can reduce, like if I wanted to reduce this, I would reduce this to 4 goes into 8 2 times, and 4 goes into here 3 times, and then that makes it easier to multiply across. I get 26 over 3. If you was to put in your calculators 13 twelfths times 8, it'll give you 26 over 3, right? So then now we're going to solve for b. So I'm going to subtract 26 thirds from both sides. So we have 9 minus 26 thirds.
We can't simplify that more?
It'll give you decimal. Does it go in there? Or is it 18? No? I don't know. Try it. It goes in there 8 times.
It'd be 8 2/3.
Yeah. Right, so Right, so we have to keep moving forward. So you can put in your calculator 9 minus 26 thirds, right? If you was to do 13 twelfths in the calculators that we have times 8, it should give you 26 thirds. Like, because your calculator simplifies this stuff for you, right? So we'll move forward. Okay, so we have 26. So we subtracted the 26 from both sides. So here we have to have a common denominator. So I'm going to multiply both top and bottom by 3 to get a common denominator. This is going to give me 27 thirds minus 26 thirds is going to equal B. So I get 1/3 equals B. So B is 1/3. So now we have our slope and we have our y-intercept. So we're going to go back up and just plug it into the equation. So my slope was, 13 twelfths. So the equation is going to be y equals 13 over 12 x and then plus 1/3. So are we good with that? All right. So I'm going to erase this part because I'm going to do B now. You guys can always go back and rewind the video if you need to. All right, so for this next one, I'm going to use point slope in order to solve it. So I told you guys I'd show you both ways. All right, so for B, I'm going to use the point slope equation. So they told me my slope was -2, and this is a point, so I'm going to use this as my x and my y value. So I'm going to plug that into the point slope formula. So some people plug in the x and y in the wrong places for point slope. So since this is my point, this is really x sub 1 and y sub 1 because it's the first point, it's the only point. But it goes in for that x sub 1 and y sub 1, not the original x and y. So the equation would just be y minus your y1, which is 7, equals your slope, -2, times x minus your x of 1. So minus the -1 would give me +1, right? So you just plug it in. And now you're just going to solve for y. Distribute the -2 to both. So y minus 7 equals -2x minus 2. And then we would add 7 to both sides. So you get y equals -2x plus 5. So you can use point slope like we did on the first one. So I'm going to use point slope on the next one. I just think that sometimes with point slope, it's all there. You don't have to remember all those different steps, like plug this in, find B, then plug it back in. If you guys can use point slope to solve, sometimes it makes it faster. Right? So I'm going to use point slope again to solve for C. So the first thing we'd have to do is we'd have to find our slope. Right? So M is going to be what? We'd say, how do we find a slope? Here's my 2 points. So, yep, so just give me the numbers.
3 and 4.
Okay, 8 minus. Someone's music is too loud. I can hear it all the way up here, and it's gonna pick that up on the recording. So you guys need to turn it off.
Alyssa.
So,
8 minus 4.
Yep, 8 minus 4 over what? Yep, 5 minus 3. Very good. So that's going to give me 4 over 2, which is 2. So then now I have the slope. I can pick either point. It doesn't matter. I can pick any of these 2 points to plug into point slope. So since this is my first point, I'm just going to pick that one. So now I'm going to plug it into point slope. So it'll be y minus y1. So y minus 4 equals 2 times x minus 3. And then distribute. So y minus 4 equals, distribute the 2 to both pieces. So 2x minus 6. Add 4 to both sides, and you get y equals 2x minus 2. Are we good with that? All right. So then the next one. So you will not get the exact same type of question like this on the final exam, but there are lots of questions that resemble this type of thing. So I'll try to give you the different scenarios like after we do this one. So the first thing it wants us to do is they want us to set up a system of equations. So when you're setting up a system of equations, you want to look to see what do they give you in the story problem. So here it says if someone has a total of 27 dimes and nickels in their pocket and they tell you that the value of those dimes and nickels is $2.05, how many of each type of coin does the person have in their pocket? Write a system of linear equations to model the situation and show or explain how you got your answer. Because there's always more than one way to do that. So here, the first thing we want to do is define our variables. So since we have dimes and nickels, I'm going to say let the D equal dimes, right? And my N is going to equal nickels. If you like X and Y, you can use X and Y. It just sometimes when you're doing story problems, it's easier just to use the letters so you can remember what they're talking about, right? Okay. So it says that we have a total of 27 coins in my pocket. So I want to write that down. So my first equation is going to be in terms of the number of coins I have. So I know I have 27 coins. What types of coins do I have? Dimes and what? Nickels. So I know that the dimes plus the nickels, I don't know how many of each one I have, but then the number of dimes plus the number of nickels in my pocket have to equal 27. So how could I write that mathematically? If I have N and D.
N plus D equals 27.
Very good. N plus D equals 27. So that's the first one. So the next thing they have to tell me in this problem is that they said that the total number of money that they have in their pocket is $2.05. So now we want to write an equation in terms of the amount of money, right? So how much is a nickel worth?
5 cents.
So we would say 0.05 times N, right, times the number of nickels I have, plus 0.10D, the number of dimes I have, has to equal, that together has to equal how much? $2.05, right? So now I have a system of equations that I can solve. So before I go and I solve the system, I want to talk about like other ways that you could see this type of equation. So on your exam, it may say something like, the high school decides to put on a play. They sell adult tickets and children's tickets. Adult tickets are $5, children's tickets are $2.50. They could do the same type of scenario. They could say on Tuesday they sold 700 tickets. And they could say, you know how much each ticket is worth? They could say how many children's tickets and how many adult tickets did we sell? And you do the same type of thing. You'd say the children's tickets plus the adult tickets have to equal the number 700 tickets that we sold, right? And then the amount of money, $5 for the adult ticket plus $2.50 for the children's tickets would have to equal the total money that they took in that day. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So anytime they tell you, like you have a scenario that they tell you how many of an item that they sold, but they could use t-shirts and pants, right? They sold 30 t-shirts and pants at the store. This is how much the t-shirts are worth and this is how much the pants are worth, and they tell you how much money they brought in, and they say how many t-shirts and how many pants did they sell, right? So as you guys can see, we can put all kinds of different scenarios together for this type of situation. Does that make sense? So you just want to look at what they're asking you, and if they're asking you something that gives you one in terms of the amount of items they sold or did or whatever, and the other one is monetary value, that's how you set up the equation each time, okay? So now I want to go about solving this. So we can solve systems of equations by graphing them, and in this case we'd have to make them x and y's and solve for y's, so it's too much work. We could use substitution, so I could either solve this first equation for n or for d and then substitute it in, or we could use elimination. So elimination always seems to be the fastest if it's set up that way, right? So in this case, it's already, the n's are lined up and the d's are lined up. So this one works out nicely to do elimination. So remember, if we want to eliminate equations or variables, we want the leading coefficients to be exactly the same number, but opposite signs, right? So in order to do that, I'm going to multiply this first equation, the whole equation, by negative 0.10, because that's easy to do, because it's just moving a decimal and timesing it by 1, right? And changing the sign. So negative 0.1 times n is negative 0.10n, right? Negative 0.1 times d is minus 0.1d, right? You can put the 0 or don't put the 0. And then negative 1 times 27 is negative 2.70, right? So then now I can just combine these two equations together. So the positive and the negative 0.1d goes away. That's a zero pair. And so now I just do the math. I just add. So 0.05n minus 0.10 gives me negative 0.05n. And then 2.05 minus 0.270 is negative 0.65. Trying to solve for the nickels, so how could I solve for the nickels?
Because you divide that.
Yeah,
This
divide.
is 0.
Yep.
You don't have to.
Yes. Divide both sides by negative 0.05, and you get how many nickels?
13.
13 nickels. Okay, so if we have 13 nickels and I have 27 total, so now I have 13 plus the number of dimes I have has to equal 27. So then I would subtract the 13, right? And you get how many dimes? 14. So we have 13 nickels and 14 dimes. Are you good with that? All right. So next one, it says, how many months would it take you to pay off $350 cell phone bill if you had to pay it back at a rate of $40 a month? It says just to show your work or explain how you got your answer. So even if we didn't use a mathematical equation, like an algebraic equation, if I told you that you owed me $350 and you're going to have to pay me back in $40 installments, like how could you figure out how long that was going to take you to pay it off? Without writing an equation. Divide. Exactly. You would just divide. 350 divided by 40, and that gives you what?
It was like 8.75.
Yeah, 8.75, exactly. So then if it takes you 8 it takes you 8 3/4 of a month, how many months will it take you before you have enough money to pay me off? 9 months. Yeah, so even though you have the money before the 9th month, it would take you 9 months, right, to pay me off. So that's the answer you'd look for like on the test. So mathematically, how can we write that? So, well, we know if we're trying to figure out how long it's going to take for us to pay it back, then we want to know when I owe $0, right? And that's going to equal, I start with, even if we kind of wrote it backwards, I don't know why they always put the slope first, because sometimes it doesn't always make sense, but if we have $350, right, that's what we're starting, it's our initial value, and we're going to subtract $40 from that, right, each month, then we have an equation that would look like this. And if we had to put it in slope-intercept form, then we just say y equals negative 40m plus 350, right? So if I wanted to solve this, you would subtract 350 from both sides, so you get negative 350, that equals negative 40m, and just like you said, you would divide both sides by 40, and you get 8.75. So it would take approximately 9 months to pay it off. Exactly. But sometimes on those multiple choice tests, one of the questions might be, what is the equation, right, that fits the scenario? So it may not just be the answer, they may actually ask you to look for the equation that would represent the scenario. All right? So since it is multiple choice, though, you could always, like, plug values in and see what makes sense. Like, there's always more than one way to do the problem. All right, so let's go on to the next one. So here we go. It says, if you work at Meyer shuffling carts and they pay you $8 an hour, which linear function would model how much you make during the course of the day? E represents how much money you earn. H is the number of hours you earn. Or H is the number of hours that you work. Okay. So another thing is, like, when you guys go to take a multiple choice test, like, you want to go through and, like, look at the problems that you have, girls, and you want to mark off the things that it can't be, because sometimes, like, you can eliminate 2 just like as you go through them, right? So if we think about it, this first one here says E equals H plus 8. So what is that saying? This one says that the amount of money you earn, they're going to take the number of hours you work and they're going to add 8 to it.
That is one of the possibilities.
That is one of the possibilities. So would that work? Would you like it if your employer calculated your paycheck based on this first equation? So if you worked for 8 hours, how much money would you get according to this first equation?
$64.
So if you worked 8 hours in this first equation, you're only going to get $16. Right? Because this one says to figure out how much you earn, they're going to take the number of hours you worked and they're going to add 8 to it. So this one, would it work? You wouldn't want this because they're taking the hours plus 8. You should be taking the number of hours and you should be multiplying. So then,
So it's B.
so is B, yes.
God ain't going.
Yeah. So even if you look at it, you're like, I don't know which one it should be. Like you, then put yourself in that scenario. Would I want to be paid like that? Is that how I want to earn my paycheck, right? So it says, would a negative number make sense in this scenario?
Yeah.
No. Why not?
Because you're making money.
Okay, so if E is negative, what does that mean that you're doing?
Not working, not making money.
Well, no, but what would it mean in this scenario? So it means that who's taking money? So if you have a negative earnings, then that means you're doing what? You're paying Myers to let you push their carts around.
So you're not working, you're not making money, like I said.
So it'd be like you going to Cedar Point. When you go to Cedar Point, you pay them to ride the rides, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, if you went to Myers and you had a negative E value, that means that you're giving them money to push their carts around.
I mean, you're dumb and broke.
Oh, you're still going to be broke after that. So, I don't know. So yeah, so no, negative does not make sense in this scenario because who would go to work and pay someone to work there? I don't know.
Rich people.
Well, maybe. All right. So let's move on to the next one. So let's turn the page. We're going to the next sets of problems. All right. Does anyone need me to work number 5?
No.
No. I just want to make sure, though, that the only thing that I see the common mistake on this one is B. Like some people, so make sure you have like 4t, this would be minus 28, equals 3 minus t minus 1. Like hopefully you did not like substitute or distribute the 3 through. So in this case here, we would end up with 4t minus 28 equals 2 minus t. So let's finish solving this one. So then I would add t to both sides, and I would subtract 28, or add 28, sorry. So then that would give me 5t equals 30, so t should equal 6. So did you get 6 for the second one? If you did not get 6 for the second one for B, then you probably did this part wrong. So make sure you make a note on your review that if you have a negative outside of a parenthesis, that you just distribute the negative, not the number 2, okay? Because the number, that says 3 minus that whole factor, okay? All right, so let's look at the system of equations. So for systems of equations, we can solve them by substitution, elimination, and graphing. So the first one, I'm going to use substitution. So actually, I always use elimination if I can because it's the fastest, but I will demonstrate substitution for you guys. So this first one would be the nicest one to do substitution for.
But if you do elimination.
Yeah, I honestly, elimination, do you guys know how to do both? Then,
Yeah.
no? All right, so elimination means that you're just going to try to eliminate one of the variables. So this one, the first one, A, leads itself nicely to eliminate because all I have to do is change the signs for each one of them to get rid of the x's, right? So if we multiplied, let's say this bottom row here by -1, right? Then I would have, let's see, x plus y equals 2 on the top, and then the bottom row would be -x minus 2y equals -4. And then now you just combine those together, which would give you -y equals -2, so then y equals 2. Right, so then once you know what y is, you can plug it back into either equation to find x. So we have x plus 2 equals 2. I'm going to plug it in the top one. Subtract 2 from both sides, you get x equals 0, right? So then the solution for this first one would just be when x is 0, y is 2. So that is the solution. Right. The next one, I would use elimination as well, because I would just subtract the 3x from both sides. I would subtract the 3x from both sides, and automatically the 3x's would be eliminated, right? If we was to use substitution, what we would do is this. We would take this, it says y is 3x minus 1, and I would substitute it in here for y. So that would give us 3x minus 2 times 3x minus 1 and that would have to equal -7, and then I would distribute and solve. So it would give me 3x minus 6x plus 2 equals -7, so -3x. I would subtract 2 from both sides, so that would give equals -9. Divide by -3, and you get x equals 3. And then you just plug it back in to where y equals. So y equals 3 times 3 minus 1. So that gives me 8. So then the solution would just be 3, 8. But like I said, elimination, if you solve by elimination, you would have gotten the same thing, just faster, right? Because you could have just moved the 3 over and just eliminated it and then divide it. So it would have been like 2 steps instead of 4. All right. So for this last one here, I'll let you guys do this one on your own. Like I would multiply either the top or the bottom row by -1 to eliminate the 4n and then solve. So I'll make sure I put the solution up for that, but I'm going to move on. All right, so now this is the part that you guys haven't started doing. So quadratics. So before you guys come back tomorrow, you guys have to have problem number 30 done, but I'm going to do a couple of these with you today. Okay? So this first one, it says write an equation for the parabola with this form. So they gave you the vertex and a point. So remember that in this equation, the h and k is your vertex. Right? So I'm just going to plug that point into this equation. So we have y equals a times x minus 1 squared plus 6, right? So all I did was plug the vertex into the equation for h and k. So this is the equation I need. The problem is I don't know what that a value is, right? So I need the a value. So in order to find the a value, I'm going to use this point that they gave me to find out what the a value is. So I'm now going to plug in that point for x and y. So we say -3 equals a times 2 minus 1 squared plus 6. And then now I'm just going to do the math. So -3 equals a times 1 squared, which would be 1, then plus 6. Subtract 6 from both sides, and you get -9 equals your a value. So then now you're just going to plug the -9 in for your a back into your equation. So now you have y equals -9 x minus 1 squared plus 6. Right? So that's the equation. So are you good with that? So I'm not going to do 8 for you. I'll let you guys do 8 on your own. You good, Genesis? Okay. All right. So let's look at the next type of problem. It says find the vertex of the quadratic using h equals -b over 2a. So remember to do that. The first thing you have to do is make sure it's in standard form. Right? When it's in standard form, we know that it would be in y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So to find the vertex, remember we're going to say the h coordinate of my vertex is going to equal the opposite of b. So in this case, my b value is what? Yeah, so a is 1, b is what? -6, and my c value is 15. So to find the h, we're going to say the opposite. So the opposite of 6, or -6 is +6, right? Over 2 times my a value. So that's going to give me an h of 3. So if I know what the h coordinate is, and I know this is the equation, how can I find the y value for that? So if I have the equation, I want to find. So I have the h coordinate of the vertex. I want to find what the y value is when h is 3.
Plug the 3 into the equation.
Yep. So we're going to find f of 3, right? We're going to plug it in. So we're going to have, instead of x squared, we'll have 3 squared minus 6 times 3 plus 15. So it's going to be 9 minus 18 plus 15. So if we did -18 plus 15, that's -3. So 9 minus 3 is 6. It's giving you the answer. So that means the vertex is going to be 3, 6. Right? All right. So that's how you do those problems. So for this next one, it just says identify the vertex and the axis of symmetry. So this one's pretty easy. Remember, your vertex, again, is your h and k. So in this case here, the vertex is just going to be -3, 2. So remember, it's x minus h, right? So -3, 2 is my vertex. And remember, the axis of symmetry goes through the x-coordinate of the vertex. So your axis of symmetry is just going to be x equals -3.
What is it from?
Because remember, it's the equation is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. So if that's a plus, then remember your h has to be minus. All right. And that's all the ones I have that I plan on going over with you guys today. So you have to finish through 30, right, before tomorrow. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen recording now.